From the universally disliked Gabriella Dawson to everyone's favorite family man Christopher Herman, the characters of Chicago Fire have gone through some real emotional roller coasters. With that said, here are the most hated and loved characters on the show.
Take an iPad to Met tonight, watch movies with Otis. You in?
Sounds fun, but Molly's gonna be back tonight. Hockey game. Anyway,
Let's start with the one we hate the most, Gabriella Dawson. She was one of the main characters for the first 6 seasons, and even though she's made a few guest appearances since then, her character left a lasting impact on the show. As the paramedic in charge at Firehouse 61, Dawson had to make some tough calls in the field, but she always managed to excel under pressure. Later on in the show, Dawson married Matt Casey, but unfortunately, she eventually left him to work in Puerto Rico. While her determination to improve herself and her firehouse is admirable, sometimes it can come at a cost to those around her. For example, she was once caught secretly stalking a troubled teenager named Bria in season 6, and even entered her residence without permission. Not cool. Even though Dawson and Casey were both devastated by the loss of their foster son Louis, her decision to run away and leave Casey behind left many fans feeling conflicted. Gabby indeed had a tendency to be headstrong, sometimes to a fault, despite others warning her about the potential negative consequences of her actions. She often pushed forward with what she believed was the right thing to do. Another long-standing character who's super annoying like Gabby is Randall Mouch McCollin. He's one of the longest-serving members at Firehouse 51, alongside Wallace Bowden and Christopher Herman, and he's generally known for being a reliable friend and colleague. But he's a bit of a lazy bum. Mouch earned his nickname from his love of watching TV at the fire station, man and couch. Get it? He's also married to Chicago PD Sergeant Trudy Platt, and his connection to her can sometimes be helpful to his co-workers in getting the police assistance they need. Mouch's selfish tendencies can sometimes get in the way of his role as a firefighter, as well as a friend and mentor. In the episode titled Double Red, Mouch is assigned to attend training that he had been too lazy to finish years before. During the class, he chooses to show off to the younger firefighters instead of respecting the program or its trainer, which ultimately leads to him failing the training. And then he has this childish rivalry with Chuck Rutledge, which often results in him dragging other members of Firehouse 51 into his damaging pranks. While Mouch is generally a reliable and well-liked member of the team, his selfish behavior can sometimes create problems for him and his colleagues. But I think it's fair to say that this next character is probably the most hated by fans overall, and it's none other than Stella Kidd. The character, played by Miranda Ray May, joined the Chicago Fire cast in season 4, and she quickly became a fan favorite. The character is a total boss who knows what she wants and is not afraid to go after it. She's an awesome firefighter and has a steamy romance with Kelly Severide. You can't help but root for her, especially when she has to deal with sexism from a superior. Unfortunately, things didn't go so great for Stella in the later seasons. In season 10, she disappears for a while after a fight with Kelly, and it turns out she went to work on her Girls on Fire program. But still, ghosting your fiance for months is never a good idea. In season 11, she also caused a lot of drama with her mistreatment of teammate Sam Carver. She even threatened to kick him off the truck at one point, unless he talked about his scar. Not cool, Stella, not cool. And let's not forget about her jealous streak too. Now, even though this next character wasn't around for too long, Clarice Carthage still ended up being extremely hated by fans. You see, Clarice and Leslie Shea were in a relationship for years, but then Clarice left and broke Shay's heart. One day while Shay was on a call, she unexpectedly runs into Clarice at her baby shower with her husband. Soon after, Clarice reaches out to Shay to reconcile their relationship, and Clarice moves back in with her. It turns out their dynamic works well, even with Clarice now living with Shay and her roommate Severide. When Clarice goes into labor, her husband Daniel comes to visit his son at the hospital. Unfortunately, right after he leaves, Clarice and Shay are served with custody papers because Daniel is suing for full custody. To increase their chances of winning, they decide to look for apartments together. They also meet with a lawyer to fight for their son. But things take a turn for the worse when Clarice breaks up with Shay for the second time and decides to move to New York after her ex-husband agrees to split custody, only if she moves away. She basically discards Shay like it's nothing, and we are not okay with that. But enough of the hating. Let's move on to the characters we love love the most on the show, like Joe Cruz, who is one of the most lovable firefighters at Firehouse 51, and it's hard not to like him. Cruz has a soft spot for those less fortunate than himself. This even includes his younger brother Leon, who joins a gang briefly. Cruz goes out of his way to get him out of the gang, even if it means risking his own freedom by refusing to save the gang leader during a fire. He also has an incredible friendship with Otis, another firefighter at the firehouse. When Otis passes away, Cruz stays by his side until the very end. He's so affected by the firefighter's death that Joe decides to name his son after his friend. Besides his own son, Cruz and his wife take in a foster son named Javi, whom he rescues on the job. Despite some complications, he fights to adopt Javi because the boy feels safe and loved by their family. I mean, Joe Cruz is really one of those guys who cares deeply about the people he loves and his community, and his best friend is kinda the same. Fans literally love Otis as much as they love Cruz on the show. Out of all the deaths on the show, Otis was definitely the one that hit viewers the hardest. He had been through so much before his untimely demise, which is why he was such a fan favorite. Despite being overlooked and underestimated, Otis became a hero in his own right, and always wanted to improve and be the best firefighter he could be, even if it meant worrying a little too much. It was so sad to see him go, but we'll always remember Otis as a lovable and brave character who brought a lot of heart to the show. He was a real jokester and always lifted spirits, and his friendship with Joe was a highlight of the show. They were the ultimate duo and always had each other's backs, even until the very end of Otis's life. Even though he was known for being one of the most upbeat members of the team, Otis had some pretty bad luck. But eventually in season 8, Otis sacrificed himself to save his entire team and tragically passed away. It was a really emotional moment for fans, and his final moments with his best friend Joe were heartbreaking. He tells Joe, "Brother, I will be with you always," in Russian, which was such a beautiful yet heartbreaking moment. But you gotta admit that Christopher Herman is the really good dad of the show. Herman is the ultimate family man and one of the most beloved cast members of the show. As a veteran firefighter at Firehouse 51, Herman has mastered the art of balancing his time between the firehouse and his family. He's also a co-owner of a bar called Molly's, which he takes over after Otis's death. Herman is fiercely protective of his teammates and does not hesitate to stand up for what's right. In season 10, episode 4, he kicks a customer out of Molly's for making homophobic remarks toward Darren, showing that he won't tolerate hate speech in his establishment. His colleagues also consider him to be extremely trustworthy and understanding. Even Chief Bowden asks him to be his best man. And Casey also trusts Herman with the news that he may be leaving Chicago to become the guardian of Darden's children. Well, those were some of the most hated and loved characters of Chicago Fire. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.